Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how I went from this to this. A difference of 50 pounds in lean mass. I was 16 on the first picture, and I was 20 on the latest picture. So it was a period of 4 years, and I think there are 5 crucial factors you should keep in mind if you want to gain muscle. And I'm going to go over them in this video. I also ordered them in the order of importance. So I think if you definitely do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 being less important than 1, you're gonna have great results. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1, you should lift weights, obviously. But what does that mean? I think a lot of people just go to the gym but never really change. It also depends if you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced. There are different things you should keep in mind when lifting weights, depending where you're at in your journey. But let's start with the beginner. If you're a beginner, I would say go to the gym 2, 3, maybe 4 times, but start with 2 or 3. You have programs like full body program, upper lower, that will obviously be more like 4 times a week, upper lower. But full body is a great way to start, I think, also to learn different movements. You should definitely focus on getting the technique right in the beginning. Don't be too stressed about increasing the weight, increasing the reps or sets. That's more for when you become more intermediate, or when you transition from beginner to intermediate. Then you should really start to track your lifts and know how many reps, sets and weight you're doing. When you're intermediate, I think a perfect program is upper lower. You can make an insane progress. I think on that program I've done it. A lot of my friends have done it. And then you also, of course, have a very popular push-pull leg split. That's actually 6 times a week. A program more for advanced people, but even they don't really use it nowadays. I think it's really declining in popularity. With good reason, because I think 6 times is just really pushing it for the average Joe who just wants to look good. If you're not a bodybuilder, I think a maximum of 5 times a week of lifting weights, that's the ceiling. You don't need any more. But beginner, full body, that's all you need. Really practice the lifts, make sure your technique is great. And then we can start to focus on the weight you're doing, the amount of reps and the amount of sets you're doing. And then what you want to focus on is every week you progress. You want to be able to either increase the weight, increase the number of reps, or increase the number of sets. So that's the most important part about lifting weights, in my opinion, is really trying to drive those numbers up. So either increasing the volume or increasing the weights. And that's how you really make progress. Together, of course, with the other factors, but in the part of lifting weights, you want to progress. You want to get better every time you go to the gym. Obviously, this won't be perpetually, because otherwise we would all look like the Hulk. This will start to decline once you become more advanced. So really keep that in mind. But in the beginning, if you're beginner intermediate, it will go every week. I think you can add maybe 2.5 pounds, 5 pounds to the lifts, or even over 1 rep, 2 reps, 1 set or 2 sets. But you want to play with those variables, and you want to increase one of them every week. Obviously, I talked already about the kind of programs you can do, the full body, the upper lower, push-pull legs, although it's less favorable. You want to hit every muscle group 2 times a week. That's it for the big muscle groups. I would even go as far as to say the smaller muscle groups like biceps, certain parts of your delts, you can hit those 3, maybe 4 times a week. Your calves as well, if you're into that. I don't really like the aesthetic of big calves, so I don't train my calves that frequently. But if you want that, you can definitely hit your calves 3 or 4 times a week. So for the big muscle groups, you want them 2 times a week. For the smaller muscle groups, you want to hit them 3 or 4 times a week. Now maybe one last thing. I know we all have busy lives, so you want to maybe get in the gym and get out quite quickly. Then focus on the compound movements, like a bench press, a squat movement, a deadlift movement. Don't start doing those fluff exercises because they will take more time, and you can hit multiple muscle groups with a compound movement. It's in the name. So try to focus on them, and they will give you the biggest bang for your buck. So focus on those compound movements. Number 2 is sleep. I think this is very much overlooked, especially in the student community, because we like to party as well, and that has an impact on our sleep. But sleep is just so critical for your recovery. If you don't sleep enough, you won't gain as much muscle as you want to. That's just how it is. Recovery is so important because actually you break down your muscles in the gym, but they grow while you rest, recover, and sleep. So you really want to focus on sleep. Now, there are a couple of things you can do to improve your sleep, some lifestyle choices. Like, for example, limiting the amount of blue light you have at night. You can buy blue light blockers, you can turn off the screens 1 hour before you go to bed, start reading a book to really wind down as well. A second thing you can do is to limit your caffeine after noon. So you can drink your caffeine before 12, but after 12 I would try to limit it as much as possible, because caffeine has a half-life of 5 hours. So even if you drink a coffee at 12, at 5 p.m. you still have half of that coffee in your system. So you can imagine if you drink coffee afternoon, it will be in your system even longer. And if you drink coffee at night, then you're completely screwed, in my opinion. So people who say, yeah, but coffee doesn't affect me or affect my sleep, no, you just don't know it because you're used to it. You're used to drinking coffee at night. And actually, maybe a quick science lesson, how coffee works is you have caffeine in coffee, and caffeine is very similar to an adenosine molecule. And what adenosine does, it binds to an adenosine receptor in our brain, and when it binds to an adenosine receptor, it gives a sleepy effect. But what happens is coffee or caffeine can also bind to the adenosine receptor, and therefore adenosine can no longer bind on it because it's already occupied. And therefore we do not get the sleepy effect because a caffeine molecule is binding on it. That's how it works. So yeah, keep that in mind, because I think caffeine is the most widely used drug. It is a drug. It can be very helpful, it can give you focus as well, but you should be mindful of how much caffeine you're intaking. Another thing most of you probably know is you should aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Something that is less commonly known is you should also try and have a consistent bed and wake up time. It would also help a lot with your sleep quality. I know I'm also just human. I don't always go to bed at the same time. I also like to party still or have some social events, and then as a result I get in bed much later than I normally do. But I really try to keep my bed and wake time as similar as possible when I have the chance. So I would really urge you to do the same. Try to keep it as consistent as you can. Of course, we all want to live, and I get that. One last thing in terms of sleep, try to sleep in a cool and dark room, because that just will increase your sleep quality. Another thing you can also try is to actually use mouth tape, because a lot of us are mouth breathers, which is actually not the correct way to breathe. You want to breathe through your nose, because your nose actually filters and humidifies the air and gives you a much better quality of sleep. So I would try definitely to tape your mouth shut. That pretty much forces you to breathe through your nose. No, you won't die, trust me. But I feel if I do this regularly, I feel an increase in the quality of my sleep. So try it out. You have some cheap options. Maybe I'll throw some on the screen for like mouth breathing tape. So yeah, definitely try it out. Number 3, eat in a caloric surplus. This is also so important as a building block for building muscle, because if you do not have an excess of calories, where is your body gonna find the building blocks to build more protein? If you're a beginner, you can get away with not eating in caloric surplus because you just watch at a weight and you will build muscle. But after a certain period, after the newbie gains, I think you're all familiar with, then it's really important that you also start eating in a caloric surplus. Don't stuff your face with everything you see. Have a moderate caloric surplus of 250 or 500 calories. Slowly gain weight. I would recommend maybe 0.25% per week. So that's around 2% per month. And once you hit a ceiling and you think by visual cues you're a bit too fat, try to do a little mini cut. Go into a caloric deficit, lose some weight, and then you can build back up. Lose some weight, build back up. And that's how you do it. A dirty bulk, I've tried it. I know a lot of people who tried it. I've seen a lot of people online who tried it. It usually ends in regrets because you've let yourself go and it takes so much time to get all the fat off that it's just not worth it, in my opinion. And you can also have a very qualitative life just by eating a small surplus. You can still go to social events, you can still eat pizza, but don't eat 2 pizzas and ice cream. Try to limit yourself a bit and have some self-control. I mean, it also builds discipline, so keep it to a lean bulk, I would say. In order for you to come up with the amount of calories you want to eat, you want to first calculate your BMR, so your basal metabolic rate. For that, you can use the Harris-Benedict equation. So then you have your BMR. After that, you can use a factor for your activity. So for example, if you're only lightly active, you do your BMR times 1.2. If you're moderately active, you can do 1.3, etc. I also put some numbers on the screen, but that's pretty much how it goes. Then you have your maintenance calories, and you just add 250, or if you want to be less conservative, 500. But I would maybe start with 250, and then you can still add 500 if necessary, if you don't gain as fast as you want to. But that's pretty much how you come up with your total daily caloric number for gaining weight. And then you just track your weight so that it falls in line with a 0.25% increase per week. Of course, then you have your caloric number, but you want to divide it into protein, fats, and carbs. For protein, it's pretty simple. Just take 1 gram per pound of body weight. So me, for example, I'm 190 pounds. That's 190 grams of protein. The rest, in my opinion, doesn't really matter. Sometimes I have high fat days, sometimes they are a bit lower. It just depends what I eat. Of course, if you want the best performance possible, you want your carbs high, but you don't want to bring your fats to zero because fats are actually necessary, carbs aren't really necessary. But I would always recommend someone to keep their fats above 50 grams. If you go below, it will start to have an effect on your hormones. So I would say definitely keep them above 50 grams, preferably around 60, 70, in my opinion. That's all, because I've made the mistake of eating like 40 grams, 35 sometimes, thinking it was a good idea. It wasn't. I actually really felt it on my hormones. I also once took a blood test. My testosterone was down because you need, for example, cholesterol for testosterone production. So try to keep your fats above 50 grams. That's just a rule of my own. Then number 4 is hydration. This is also a critical component. If you want to gain muscle, I would recommend drinking at least 4 liters of water every day. It's not only good for building muscle, but it's also great for your skin, hair, and nails. They also need water. But the reason you want to be hydrated is it will also increase your performance in the gym. It's also very important for muscle contraction. So those are all key components for building muscle and lifting weights. One optional recommendation I have for you is to maybe invest in electrolytes, because they can further help to increase that hydration level in your body. If you sweat a lot, you actually lose a lot of salts, magnesium, potassium. So definitely look into that if you do a lot of cardio and you sweat a lot. Then, last but not least, our favorite subject, I would say, or the subject that our industry loves to talk about. Supplements, yes. If I had to give a recommendation of which supplements you need, it would be 0, because you don't need supplements. But if you really want to invest in some, I would say number 1 is creatine, because they help with the ATP production. They are the most researched supplement in our industry, so definitely invest in creatine. It's not only good for building muscle, it's also good for cognitive function, etc. So that's number 1. Always. Number 2 is a good high quality protein powder. Can be whey, can be casein. It's just convenient and it's a cheap option, so you don't have to eat all the chicken or buy all the chicken or meat, because it can get quite expensive, especially in Belgium. Chicken or meat is quite expensive here, and fish, yeah, don't even start talking about it. It's crazy expensive. A third supplement is the electrolytes, which I mentioned in the hydration part, and a 4th supplement, that's pretty much the last one, is a multivitamin. Just as an insurance policy, You never know if you get all the vitamins in your diet. But be aware for multivitamin that they are bioavailable, because you have a lot of cheap ones that pretty much just contain a lot of vitamins, but are they really absorbed by your body? We don't really know. So that pretty much concludes the video, guys. Those are the 5 main factors I think have the biggest influence in building muscle. So number 1 is lift weights, number 2 is sleep enough, number 3 is eat enough foods, be in a caloric surplus, number 4 is hydrate yourself, and number 5, if you want, optional, is to invest in some of the supplements I mentioned. Now, if you're interested in, for example, my transformation video, you can find it here, and I hope to see you in my next video. Ciao.